girls, you've tuned in to Braveheart Talks. We're so glad that you're here for this conversation. Wherever you're listening to, whether you're in the car, going for a walk, doing your laundry, we pray that this blesses you. And we're starting a brand new series. We are super excited for this. We have called this Reinventing Yourself in New Seasons, because we all go through seasons, right?
That's right.
And God is always up to something. So we're going to take over the next 4 episodes, just talk all about the different seasons and how we navigate them, how we navigate failure, how we evolve. And we are super excited that you've tuned in. So Emma, this is episode 1.
It is.
We're going to jump straight into, and the title of this, if I get it wrong, you're just going to have to correct me and laugh at me, because I've been practicing this word, girls.
It's a
you
tongue
should try.
tie.
It is, isn't it? We've titled this Unfollow Your Familiarity.
Unfollowing.
Get that right?
Yeah, that's
Your
right.
familiarity.
Unfollowing familiarity.
There we go.
It's the things that you are familiar with. How and why should we unfollow them?
And I love that. And let's kick it off then. What is that word? What is familiarity, and why do we love it? Why do we love things that are familiar?
Yeah, so familiarity is the things that you are knowledgeable in, experienced in, the things you're most comfortable with. And so familiarity becomes our default in everything. We like to be around the people that we're familiar with.
Yeah.
We like to wear the clothes that we're most familiar with, will be our like comfy clothes or our PJs. We like to read the parts of the Bible we're most familiar with. We like familiarity because it's what we know, it's what we're used to, and it's what we're most comfortable with. And so we all naturally cleave to and keep going to those things that we are most comfortable and familiar with.
Yeah. And I think as well, other words that come to my mind is things like routines and, structure. Like, I love living a life of routines. I know what I'm doing in the day. And if anything changes that, I'm like, I freak out. So I think, all them things come under this umbrella. So is there a danger? And if so, what are the dangers of living that life? Because you're saying like so many of us love to live a life that's comfortable, that's familiar. So what are the dangers, or is there any?
I think in life, in many ways, seasons change, and they change in the natural. One minute you're single, the next you're married, the next you're becoming a mum, the next you've got teenagers, the next you're empty nesters. Like, life just evolves and transitions all of the time. So I think we cannot cleave to what is too familiar, because if we do, we're not going to change with the new. So you can apply that practically or spiritually speaking. So for example, the old version of the way you did things might not align with the new you, who you want to become. And so we have to be able to let go of what is familiar. Have you ever had to throw out a piece of clothing that you just don't want to part with? I've got these this all-in-one overall suit. If I pulled it out of the wardrobe, you go like, oh yeah, that's very signature Emma. And actually Luke said to me, babe, you've had that for about 6 years. And do you know what I have? I keep throwing it in the washing machine, dyeing it, bringing the colour back to life. But I'm like, I'm so comfortable in it. I love the style. The fashion's never gone out. And he's like, go get yourself something new. But it's that kind of, we can have that with traditions and the way that we are, the way that we speak, the way that we view money, the way that we view relationships. We can just stay stuck in one way and one shape and one mold. And I think that we have to transition to new things. So we have to allow the new version of us to realign with a new vision for us. And so the way you did life just together as a married couple, that has to change when there's a baby in the equation as well. And so you have to have a new vision for the now 3 of you, and you have to learn a new flow and how to do life. Familiarity can limit growth. And that's the most important thing, because we all go to what feels safe. Because to unfollow that, what feels safe, is to take a chance, it's to take a risk, it's to delve into the unknown. But I actually think you would never do anything in life, never do anything different in life. If you want, what's that saying that, it's a sign of foolishness, isn't it? When you're craving for new results, but you keep doing the same things.
Yeah.
And you keep thinking, I just want it to be different, but you keep doing the same habits, the same traditions. You know, if you want to be successful financially, you've got to learn some new ways and stop falling into the old familiar ways with your old habits. And I think one of the standout stories in the Bible to me is when Jesus went back to his hometown of Nazareth. And it actually says that he shook the dust off his feet and he moved on to the next town. It says that he could do no miracles there. And the reason he couldn't do any miracles there was because the people of Nazareth were familiar with him.
Yeah.
And because they were familiar with him being the carpenter's son, they didn't see the God in him and the good that could be done through the hands of him. So a whole town missed out on miracles because they refused to get over what they were familiar with.
So good.
And I look at that story and I think, God, never let me be so locked down and so stuck in something that I am familiar with, or I just see it as like when my husband gets up to preach on a Sunday, I need to hear what he's saying through the ears of God, through the voice of God speaking into my life, and not just be looking and going, oh, that's just my husband.
Yeah.
You know, I can switch off. It's like that with any friend. God wants to speak to you through a friend, or God speaks to me through my kids. And I can't afford to be just so familiar with who I think they are that they've not got anything important to say, because God will use them. So I just don't ever want to be that locked into what is familiar to me, that I miss out on what God's got to say to me because of the comfortableness and the people I've been dismissive of around.
I think Jesus as well, you know, he's always doing something new in our lives, and we've got to give him that margin. So sometimes when we stick to our comfort and routine, we're not giving him the margin to be like, okay, you're going to do something new, you're going to take me out of my comfort zone. I know for me a while ago, and I felt so guilty from it, because, you know, you say to God, like, let your will be done. Use me, God. As I go about my day, use me. And I used to work 4 days, so I had 1 day off. And in this day, I planned everything that I need to do for me. You know, this is my day. I've got 9 till 3 to pick the kids up. Let me stick to my structure. And I'd done a gym class, and I remember there was this woman standing next to me. She was like, hi, love. And I was like, hi. I was like, just wanted to work out, not talk. She was like, do you do this class every week? And I was like, yeah. She's like, well, next week, should we do a coffee afterwards? Because that's, you know, it's what people do. And I was thinking, I've not got time to have a coffee with you. I don't even know you. And honestly, my spirit, obviously I was like, yeah. And then in my spirit, I was like, well, I hope I never see you again, because I've got things to do. And I felt so convicted, because I was like, I asked God for, you know, for me to be used by him. But I'm so used to my own comfort and my own structure that I didn't see that he could have been working through me to that woman's life. And to be fair, never saw her again. And I felt like that was me, because I've just been so like dismissive of letting God do something new.
But God, if God is ever going to use you or work through you, he's got to break the routine in you. He's got to break that familiarity within you.
Yeah. And I think someone in the Bible, you know, is a character we're all very aware of. It's Ruth. You know, we look at her life. She had her routines, her similar life, but then everything was thrown and changed for Ruth. So talk to us a little bit about the story of the Ruth and how the transition she had to go through in the season. You know, that was unfamiliar ground. She didn't know what she was going into. Like, how can we learn from her?
Yes, great story. The story of Ruth and Naomi. Ruth actually stepped into her calling, and she did not know she was stepping into her calling. And her calling is the purpose for which God has created you. To, you know, the purpose that you're here for. And it's when your life is being led and designed by God. And it's just a tremendous story. But actually what happened was, when Ruth's husband had died, she was Naomi's daughter-in-law, and there was Oprah and there was Ruth, and they were the daughter-in-laws of Naomi, and Naomi's husband had died, and then her 2 sons had died. So you got these 3 women who are widowed, and they're living in the land of Midian, and they've been, you know, that's where their home had been for the last decade. And Ruth decides that she's going back to Israel, back to her hometown, back to her roots. And she sort of like sets her daughter-in-laws free, and she says, go and remarry, go and live your own lives, go back to your people. And Ruth turns around and says, I am not going to go. Where you go, I will follow. And Naomi puts up a bit of a fight, and Naomi is like, absolutely not. I'm telling you now, go. I'm cutting you free. Go and do your own thing. And Ruth just says these words. She says, where you go, I go. Your people will be my people. But what I love the most about Ruth in this story is she made the decision for herself. She didn't wait for someone else to talk it into making this transition. She didn't wait for somebody else to go, oh, come with me. I want you with me. Or this will be a great place for you. She made a decision on herself, and the decision was based on something she'd seen in the older lady. And I think that's a really good point, that we have to be doing life with eyes lifted. Sometimes we want to run to what's familiar with us. I want to hang out with the girls who are my own age. I want to do what everybody else is doing. Oh, where are you going, Oprah? I'll go wherever you're going.
Yeah.
We want to follow the crowd. We want to be like everybody else. We want to see what our peers are doing. But there was something in Ruth, and she looked to this older, wiser woman, and whatever she'd learned of her over the years, she was inspired by her. And she said, no, I want to go where you're going, because I still want to learn. I still want to grow, evolve, and I still want to learn. And she made that decision. So that was the first point that I would pick up off that story. So calling is found most often outside of our comfort zone. So I think if you want to be a follower of Christ and you want to walk into the days that God has for you, Ruth's whole decision of, I'm going to make a decision for myself to not go with my sister-in-law of what is normal and familiar, but I'm actually going to pursue this older, wiser woman. And because she's talked to me so much about Israel, she's talked to me so much about this God that her people serve, she's going back to all of that. I want to be aligned with that. It led her to Boaz. Ruth and Boaz have a baby who the whole lineage of Jesus comes through that union, and it's just an absolutely beautiful story. So my encouragement to you is to never go with the fellowship of the crowd. Be willing to push outside of your comfort zone in a way. And you know what? I don't know, practically speaking, what that might look like for some people. It might be you're going back to night school. It might be doing some more studying. It might be cutting some friendships loose and saying, actually, I don't need to keep doing that, what we've done every Friday night for the last, I don't know how long.
Yeah.
I'm going to actually lean in and, dig into my Bible a bit more. I'm going to listen to some podcasts. I'm going to just get involved in church a little bit more and just position myself so that because if I keep doing what was familiar, I'm just going to keep getting the same results in life. But I want my life to progress and get better. And in order for God to move in me, I need to move first.
Wow. So many gems there. And I love, how you gave a lot of mention there about who you follow as well, because it's so easy to follow the crowds, but normal isn't great for people. It's not working great for people. So there's a different way.
We did a series in church a while ago called Normal is Overrated.
Yeah.
And it's like, everybody looks at you when you're not doing what they deem as being normal, but who wants normal?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that leads us on to the next question quite well about what are some signs then we should look for in our life? If we know we're like in a season of comfort, we're following the crowds, like what are the signs that we need to evolve? We need to transition into what's next, what God has got for us next.
Yeah. I think it's something that is a yearning on the inside of you. And it's like, when you are ready to unfollow old patterns and old ways. Because it's like you can be in a room and the conversations feel small. Do you know what I mean by that? It's like the conversation, it's not stimulating. It feels very stale, very staid. People are talking at you and, hooking up with people, and you're having conversation and it's going nowhere. There's no depth. And there is a hunger in you for more. It's because there's a cry in your spirit going, unfollow this pattern in life. Feed me with something that is new, that is different, that is unfamiliar. And so that is one of the things that I would say is be aware of the conversations that you're having. And the other thing is that environments begin to feel misaligned.
Yeah.
When you are, I can remember years ago as a teenager having a season where I kind of walked away from God, walked away from church, and I was doing my own thing. I was about 19 years old, and it was a season of my life, and I was enjoying going out, and I wasn't particularly ever, I didn't drink, but I loved the party scenes. I loved just the dancing and the atmosphere, and I would go out and, but just being in that in-between stage, I remember getting to a point where it stopped being fun after a while.
Yeah.
And I was still going through the routine of going every Friday night was girls' night out. And as girls, we loved it. But all of a sudden, I was no longer loving what they were loving.
Yeah.
You know, they were just all the getting ready to go out together, the getting on the dance floor together, the fun that we'd have, the boys we'd chat to. It was exciting and it was stimulating for a season.
Yeah.
And then for me, because my spirit had been raised differently and because I was wired differently, it just stopped becoming fun. And I remember going through the routine and just thinking, this is terrible. Like, this is not cutting it for me anymore. This is not, and you know what it was? It was my spirit was dry. And I remember, you know, I was misaligned with the environment that I was in. Shortly after that, somebody actually invited me to a new church plant that was in our town. And she took me along reluctantly. I only went to keep her happy. And there was about 40 people in this room, one man and a guitar, terrible setup, terrible venue. But I actually broke down crying because I knew this is home.
Yeah.
This is what my spirit yearns for. This is where I belong. And so, yeah, they're the signs I would say, you know, that you are getting ready to unfollow familiar ways. It is when the conversation feels small and when you feel misaligned with the environment that you're in.
I think for me as well, I know when I've had a season of, I don't feel challenged. So like if I feel like every day is actually quite easy and there's nothing putting me out my comfort zone, it's a sign where I need to take on something that's going to have an element of challenge, element of new, so I can rely on God. Because before you just rely on your own strength because you're like, well, I can do today on my own, you know. So I think that's also a sign. So that leads us on nicely to sort of the last step, the last question for today then, around, you know, if women then know, okay, I need to evolve, I need to move out, what are some practical steps in them doing it? Because it's quite scary, it's quite daunting. So like, where do they start?
If they need to evolve, you know, it can be really frightening because I think whenever that you are moving away from something familiar, you're always stepping into something that is unknown. So it's new territory. It's, you know, a new job is unfamiliar. There's nothing worse than feeling like the new person in the workplace, the new girl at school, the new anything. We don't like it. You know, I think anyone and everyone who starts a new job, the first week that they're there, they just want to run back to the old job. Because for as much as they didn't like the old place, at least I knew it. There's that expression, isn't there? Better the devil you know. You know, it's why a lot of girls or women would stay in unhealthy relationships, because to stay with the man that they know who might not be treating them very well is a better option than putting yourself out there to try and go again. And it's a really it's sad when you hear that, because I think so many of us limit our lives. So many of us live our life very short-sighted. We have one life to live and God has got endless opportunities ahead of us. But if we don't take steps, then he can't order them. You know, the scripture that says, we make our plans, but the Lord orders our steps. Well, we've got to be able to make some plans and then start making progress towards that change. That's something different. It's something new. It's a new challenge. Familiarity breeds contempt. And what happens is when you become familiar with someone or something, you stop seeing, you stop honoring, you stop achieving because you're so familiar with it. Like I said to you before, I could not see Luke when he speaks as a man of God who's leading and teaching us. I could just look at him as like my husband who didn't unload the dishwasher again and left the bed unmade again. And I could, if I was just to view him in that way, then I wouldn't honor what God is doing in him and through him. And so it's good sometimes just to give yourself that little bit of a wake-up call. Don't be afraid. God never, ever leaves us. He doesn't ever take you out of something to leave you dangling in the middle of nowhere. If there's that urgency within you that I need to change the friends that I have, that I need to change the circumstances around my life, that I need to change the habits I've formed, then the chances are, especially if you're a God-honoring, God-following believer, the chances are that it's God leading you into something new. And though you don't know what the new is yet, you'll never know until you first let go of the old. I read a book many years ago, I think we might have even talked about it at some point, called Between Trapezes. And it was about that whole, the trapeze artist has to let go of one trapeze. When they're spinning on the big top roof, they swing, they have to let go in order to get hold of the other trapeze. Because if they tried to hold both at the same time, it would rip them in two. But in between letting go of that one, before you've got a hold of that one, there's this, you're in midair, you've actually got a hold of nothing, and that's a really scary place to be. And sometimes we find ourselves in those seasons in life where we are just in the middle of nowhere. It feels like, I've let go of that friendship circle because it wasn't really healthy for me. But I'm not really in another friendship circle yet, and I don't know. I just feel very alone right now. But it's okay to remember that God has you and he's ordering your steps. So I think that is really, really important for us to know. Don't fear the unknown, but embrace it and be like, if God is before me, then who or what can be against me?
So good. Well, Emma, you've given so much wisdom in this first episode. Thank you for sharing that. And girls, just know that whatever you're stepping into the new season, God is with you. And hey, the church is the best place to be around like-minded people who can encourage you in this journey as well. But we've loved today. We hope you have. Subscribe, like this, share it with someone in your world who it can bless. Tune in next week. We're going to be talking all about confidence after failure.